Ми ще раз хочемо представити пані Лару, яка представляє жіночий ресурсний центр із Єревана. В Єревані нещодавно, не так давно теж з'явився Дім прав людини, з чим ми вітаємо теж. І хочемо повернутися до тих питань, як все-таки, що це означає бути правозахисницею, тим більше правозахисницею на Кавказі, там, де ми знаємо, що є дуже серйозні такі вкорінілі традиції. Які виклики, з якими викликами ви зустрічаєтесь? І яким чином, і що допомагає ця резолюція, про яку говорила Анне, резолюція для Об'єднаних Націй щодо жінок-правозахисників?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I am very happy to be here. This is my first time in Kiev, and I'm already impressed. Okay, so as they mentioned before, I'm a human rights defender. I work on women's rights protection, and more specifically, I'm the founder of Women's Resource Center, and also the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Women. And for the past 12-13 years, I've been working in Armenia together with my colleagues and feminist collective to raise issues on violation of women's rights, to challenge patriarchy in our traditional society, and working also together with other partners in South Caucasus region, in Azerbaijan, in Georgia together. Because as you know, in Armenia we are... Am I too fast? No. Okay. Good. Okay. Why women human rights defenders? Because our topic today is that. I start with this graffiti, which I really liked, which you can find in Cairo, Egypt. And if some of you read in Arabic, it says, don't look at my appearance only, treat me like a human. It's done by a feminist artist, and it raised the issue of women defenders and also feminists who are repressed, especially in societies where patriarchal values are very prominent, and there's not much done regarding gender equality. So, challenging social stereotypes regarding the proper role and status of women as women human rights defenders. What we do, we reclaim our visible place in the public sphere, because when we talk about contesting the patriarchal values, it's also regaining our place in the public sphere, which is much more reserved to our male counterparts, especially in societies like the one I come from. Threatening patriarchal values embedded in society, starting from male privileges, to right to abortion, fight against domestic violence, denouncing harmful practices such as female genital mutilation in general, sexual violence as a weapon of war, to more recent issues like pay equity and place in leadership. These are all serious attacks to the core of society's belief, challenging the society we grew up in, and it comes with difficulties when you are challenging the core of society, the core of their beliefs. And what follows is repression, but the difference with women human rights defenders is that the repressions are not only coming from state, because you are challenging state institutions as well, but it's coming mainly also from society, because society is not used to see women active on public issues. Traditions. It's an answer to everything that is bothering patriarchy. So traditions are coming up more and more, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Societies like in Armenia and South Caucasus brought traditions back to the forefront. meaning that women, and it's affecting mostly women because it's also about the role of women in society and the place they occupy. So apart from society, it's also the family. Because when you're a woman human rights defender, you're not being repressed or attacked only by the state and society, but also inside your home. Because a lot of time, even the closest people to you, the most intimate people, they don't understand why you need to be so active, why you need to be different from what society is expecting from you. A lot of women human rights defenders have children, are married, they have parents, they take care of, and a lot of time, apart from the hard work they are doing on the field, they also need to face all the challenges that is coming from their own families. We had a lot of women human rights defenders in Armenia that were also very much repressed because of the work they were doing in their own families, saying that they were prevented to go out, prevented to go to public actions. And sometimes it's not that direct, sometimes it's more subtle. When you are a mother, for example, and you're a women human rights defenders and you need to attend conferences very quickly, there are urgent actions, you need to think also about what you do with your children. Because believe it or not, even though we are working on equality, we are still by default the people who are responsible for the family and the children. So my counterpart, male human rights defender, he doesn't need to think that much. He can just say, okay, I'm coming tomorrow for the conference. Yes, I can travel. I don't need to think about what I need to do with my children, who's going to prepare the house, etc. These are small details that are not much visible for the public in general, but these are real challenges that women human rights defenders are also facing in their own homes, which is also preventing them sometimes to do the work they need to do. So this is me, and this is my situation for the past 12 years, dealing with police and state actors on different occasions, sometimes trying to convince them that yes, we need to do a public action, sometimes fighting with them, sometimes being more rough, but it's been a long relationship, me and the police and the law enforcement. And this kind of images also a lot of time it's not accepted by society because it's not expected that a woman should deal with police, law enforcement, talk with these people, try to battle with them, to struggle. The place for women is more seen as the mother in the house, taking care of the husband, the parents, and the children. So seeing this kind of images a lot of time already, it's very revolting for some segments of society. So a lot of time, the attacks we receive as women human rights defenders, it's not only because of the work that we are doing, but also because of who we are, because we are standing here in the public space and demanding things, demanding our rights to freedom of assembly, demanding changes, raising issues on domestic violence cases, whatever is private, bringing it to the public sphere. And these are the things that a lot of time we do it alone as women. Even though we have a lot of human rights defenders and organizations, a lot of time issues like domestic violence, like the reproductive rights, rights to abortion, sex-selective abortion, etc. These are the things that we fight with women alone. And it's very rare that male human rights defenders will join forces. And they don't feel a lot of time that this kind of work is part of their work that they're doing on human rights issues. So these are some of internal challenges that we face also as women human rights defenders inside our community of human rights defenders. Another picture, I don't know, maybe a lot of you have heard about Electric Yerevan, which was last summer, when government decided to raise the gas prices, the electricity prices, and people, mostly young people, took up the streets and they closed down one of the main streets, Bagramyan, And they stayed there for days. And among the youth, there were a lot of young women. And of course, the picture here on the left side has been very much cherished because it shows a man who is fighting for his rights, showing the finger and being powerful against the state. And everybody was sharing that picture. But the other picture is a woman who also, at some points, other women like her were showing also the finger and being very active. But the difference here is that how society reacted to these two images. They were very much praising what young men were doing, but a lot of time you would hear, things like what these young women are doing there. It's not a place for good Armenian young women to be outside, 24 hours, sleeping there with other boys, protesting in the name of freedom, etc. So not only young women were facing the challenge of going against police, against the state, but they needed also to impose their place in the public and to fight all those stereotypes and comments, discriminatory comments against them. Of course, some of them decided to leave because it was too much. Sometimes it really gets too much when you are attacked from all fronts. But some of them were very positions to stay. And because of those few, there was a lot of discussion about young women, women's place in public space, in how women are changing and they're becoming, more self-determined and raising issues, which is a new way of being a woman in Armenian society. Another important issue where women's rights organizations are raising and women human rights defenders is rights related to our own sexuality. Of course, in a society like Armenia and other society where patriarchal values are very strong, when women start talking about their sexual rights, it's a big bomb, and nobody should talk about that. And a couple of years ago, when we decided to do a small public action, I don't know if you've heard about it, we have this tradition in Armenia called red apple, which is a symbol of virginity. I'm sure maybe you have this kind of traditions here, maybe you can share afterwards or not. What happens is, because virginity is so valued, and it still is, maybe not in the center of Yerevan, but in the regions, in rural areas, and in some parts of Yerevan, where when a woman is getting married, she needs to be a virgin. Of course, only the woman. We don't ask about the man. And as a symbol after the wedding, to check that she was really a virgin, we offer a basket of red apples, if we are sure that she's a virgin. Now I let you think about what kind of test they do and what kind of checking it. You can use your imagination on that. So we thought as women defenders and as feminists that this was a violation of our rights to choose on our bodies, on our sexualities. If we want to be virgin, it's for us to decide. It shouldn't be a public decision. It shouldn't be imposed. So that's why with a group of women defenders and feminists, we decided to hold this mock burial ceremony. So we decided to bury the red apple in one of the public spaces. So we were walking down the streets and with lots of red apples. We were eating some of them. And then we were burying them on the ground and doing very traditional Armenian burial ceremony, because Armenians, like many in the South Caucasus, they like this burial ceremonies where they hold for days and nights. So we did the same thing, but this time the person who died was a red apple. And we invited a lot of people in the community to join us. And the message was that to women specifically and society that it's finished, the red apple is dead as a tradition, and you can go on with your life and decide what you want to do for yourself without anyone else imposing on you. So imagine what happened in society, because this was something they really didn't like. So this was the first time, I think this took place in 2007 or 8. And we got a lot of attacks from society, hate messages, threats. We had some group of people, nationalists, who came to the day of the public action trying to show us maybe, and they were asking, we can rape you if you want because you are burying the red apple, you don't want to be virgin anymore, so maybe you need some strong man to rape you. So this was the first big attack that we received for the issues that we have raised as women defenders related to our sexuality. And it continued. If today you Google Red Apple Armenia, you will get a lot of articles written on it, a lot of videos, and until today people talk about it. Some remember us as an organization because of the Red Apple, and it's very mixed. Some, they don't like us still because we did this. Others find that it was an interesting thing and it's important to raise these issues. Nevertheless, it was an important issue that only as women defenders we were able to raise. And nobody else was even interested to join this because they thought it's a women issue. And a lot of human rights defenders who are men, even though they are working on human rights, it doesn't mean they are free of patriarchal beliefs and sexism. So these are issues that we are trying to raise as well in our own community. Okay, so these are specific examples from our work, but in general, because of the work we do as human rights defenders, you already know the threats, but also as women, there are specific threats that we face, like sexual harassment, gender-based violence in the private and public sphere. We got some incidents during public actions where women were harassed, sometimes by police, they were threatened to be raped. So these are things that specifically women defenders face, mostly. The double discrimination as human rights defenders, because of the work we do on human rights, also because of who we are as women in a society. A lot of attack to personal reputation, which is related to gender roles on the basis of social norms, tradition, or religion. I don't know if you recall, a couple of years ago, you all probably know Khadija Ismailova. She's a journalist from Azerbaijan. If you remember, they filmed her in a while she was having a sexual act and tried to pressure her by showing it publicly. It will work only if you are a woman. If you are a man and you show that, it's not the same effect. Because when they showed this film, everybody was saying, oh, you know, she's not a good woman, what is this? They did the same thing with another man, again, same way, but didn't have the same reaction. So attacking the reputation still works because we live in a society where we still believe that women should act in a certain way. And we have this image of a good Armenian or Georgian or Azerbaijani woman. Another specific threat is families attacked, threatened. Last year we had one of our women human rights defenders. You saw her picture downstairs. Her name is Zara. And she's very active in relation to violation and death, suicide rates in the army. And she got threats directly to her children. And one person threatened her saying that, I know where your children go to school and I will follow them and, you know, something harm could happen. So we see all over globally that a lot of time women, human rights defenders, not only are attacked themselves, but they are threats to their own children or families as well. Another important threat is that the situation of isolation from other human rights networks. As I mentioned before, a lot of time as women human rights defenders, we are very much isolated. We work together, but we are not always included or we are not part of a lot of networks. Or a lot of human rights networks don't include specifically a gender agenda, gender-sensitive approach to human rights violations. So this is also a threat that we face. This is a threat that we received online It was directed to our own organization, specifically because we decided to do the performance of vagina monologue in Armenian, and again something related to sexuality and sexual rights. And the threat was, we will come and cut your throat and blow you up, etc., etc. So these are the common things that we receive generally because we raise issues that defies patriarchal values in a society. And the person was arrested because we told the police. He was not convicted or anything, but the explanation he gave was, I wrote this because I thought that my sister and my mother would read this on Facebook about vagina monologue and it will affect their morality, and I thought that I need to protect this from you feminists and women human rights defenders. So this was his explanation. Another thing apart from women's rights is when we tackle LGBT issues. This is a photo we took last year during the Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia. As you know, for the past years we're being very low on those issues. We're not going a lot public because in 2011 we had a diversity march and we were attacked on the streets. And after that we decided to be more careful on how we do our actions, since we don't have protection from state actors, from law enforcement. We don't trust them as much here to be protected. So this is another picture that started a wave of attacks against LGBT activists, but also women's human rights defenders who are on the picture. And not only, whoever is working on gender issues, gender equality has been targeted on social media. Just to give you an overview, also in his recent report on situation of human rights defenders, the UN Special Rapporteur has also raised the issue specific to women human rights defenders. I don't know if I should read it maybe for the translation. Being a woman human rights defender meant being exposed to threats both because of their status as women and because they strove to defend and promote human rights. While they are attacked just like other defenders, those acts of violence are often gender-based. The threat or use of sexual violence is commonplace in numerous countries. Women defenders very often work in countries in which the dominant discourse still confines women to the private sphere, and it is often in that regard that they come under attack. So he specifically raised the issue because he interviewed a lot of human rights defenders, more than 400 I think, and he specifically met also with women human rights defenders separately, and he raised the issue that there are different threats, different approaches that need to be addressed while it comes to the work of women human rights defenders. A lot of things have changed in Armenia and the region since 2013, September 3. Anybody knows what happened? September 3 is the day where Serge Sarkisyan, presumed president of Armenia, came and declared from Russia while he was visiting Putin that Armenia will not sign the EU association agreement, which they were working on it for the past years. And suddenly they decide, one person decides that it's time to join the Eurasia Union led by Putin. So this was like a big bomb dropped for the civil society and society at large, because all those past years everybody was preparing and looking forward. And there were a lot of protest actions on the streets, a lot of arrests. Maybe you didn't hear much about it because it was not as much as you had here, since we are a little bit less as a population, but thousands of people gathered as well, and asking to stop Russian occupation and asking Putin to leave Armenia alone, and a lot of things like that. And things changed since that day. For civil society, the space started shrinking, and specifically those who were working on women's rights issues and LGBT issues. Because to legitimize the change, the government needed, supported by Russian actors, needed to legitimize the decision and to manipulate the society on why is it better to join Russian-led Eurasian Union than the EU agreement, is because society and family and traditions are better protected when you join Russia. And if you join EU, then you join perversion, you join homosexuality, pedophilia, and all those things that you are probably very familiar with. So a big smear campaign started since that day, and we were directly targeted as an organization. We even had a member of parliament who stood up in the parliament and asked that our organization should be shut down because it was bringing Western values in the Armenian society, destroying families, teaching children to become homosexuals, changing the sex of young girls. I don't know how we can manage that, but apparently this is what we were doing in the public space. So the gender hysteria started, and it was also manipulated by nationalistic groups funded by Russian sources. Why we know that? Because most of the materials they used on social media was in Russian. They didn't think about at least translating it to Armenian, so it was very obvious where it was coming from. And there was a group which is called Pan-Armenian National Parental Committee, which then we found out exists in all Eastern Partnership countries suddenly. They just popped up, and their message was to protect the family against the threats coming from the West. So a lot of people were manipulated into believing what they were saying because they had access to TV, they had access to the media, they had a lot of materials ready in Russian because Armenians understand more Russian than English or other languages. So automatically they started spreading the fear of what was coming if suddenly Armenia decides to be close to EU rather than Russia. So this gender hysteria continues until today. Today it's this is the parental committee on Facebook, which was very active. And at the same time we have statements from Russian diplomats, very direct, saying that all those West-funded organizations should stop, all those organizations, civil society organizations, women's organizations should be stopped if they are putting like a wedge between friendship between Russia and Armenia. So this was by the ambassador and the diplomats saying specific messages and asking the government of Armenia to be more strict with civil society organizations and bringing also the good example of Russia on how to restrict the work of NGOs, foreign agency, etc. During this time, the police had a draft against homosexuality, but they took it out when there was a lot of criticism. So Armenia was trying to copy whatever Russia was saying, but in a milder version for now. We don't know what could happen tomorrow. So until today, the word gender is a very bad word. It's due to this movement that started. So now they call us genderast. And a lot of time when we go to schools or we try to do trainings, a lot of time they ask us, oh, you're one of those gender people. It's very scary what you're doing. You're destroying our family and traditions. So they did posters like this with a colorful chicken or something, giving prizes to the most genderist people. And they put the photos of women human rights defenders a lot also some LGBT activists as well, but mostly women human rights defenders, because this was the same time that the gender equality law has passed in Armenia in 2013. And they used this law to say that, already they're coming for us, with this law, Law 57. So we signed the law, now this is how the society is going to look like. So in those days and until today, whenever they talk about gender equality or LGBT issues, these are the photos they show. So this is this kind of propaganda that was used a lot on social media, because most of the young people are very much connected on social media, and it was very effective. And also they would appear on TV morning shows. They would have access to all those TV shows, which us NGOs don't have access to as much. So in a couple of months, they were able to reach out to most of the population, from city center to rural areas. So whenever we started going back to our usual trainings in the regions, suddenly there was resistance against us, because they had seen photos, films about us, our faces, and they remembered that we are something bad. We are the genderast. These are some of the hate messages and we got on our Facebook accounts, telling us that we are not women because we were doing public actions raising the issue of patriarchy. This was a public action we did on March 8. That we are destroying the nation. We are breaking up the Armenian family, because if you talk about family, it's very sacred in Armenian society. So it was easy to manipulate all these messages. That, of course, we are propagating homosexuality, perversion, etc. This is something that most of the population, which is mainly homophobic, is being very affected by these messages. And also threat to national security and future of the country, because some of us also, we are peace builders. We work on the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, and a lot of time we are attacked because we organize dialogue meeting between Azerbaijani and Armenian women. And we are attacked as a threat to national security, as being non-Armenian, as working with the enemy. So there were a lot of things that we were facing at the same time. And this is more recent. Now they have a website. It's called Stop G7, but in Armenian it's Stop Good, which is Stop Faggots, it means, if you translate it. And actually I'm on the first page. I have a special corner on that. I was the first one to be, so they took all my photos, with whom I talk, what I do, and they did all articles in Armenian and Russian, and asking people to know my face if they encounter me on the street, so they be aware from me. They don't approach me, they don't hire me, they don't let their children come near me. So this is a new, more sophisticated, where they're using a website and they're sponsoring pages on Facebook, which is almost impossible to counter. So following this is very recent, a month ago that started. So I got a lot of threat messages on my Facebook account, because the link here was directly linked to my Facebook account. And some of my friends decided to do a flash mob. So they said, deactivate your account. So I deactivated my account, and they changed their profile name to my name, Lara Aharonian. So whenever they search, they will find tens of Lara Aharonian, and they will get... So that's why when you look for me on Facebook, because now they're stuck for 2 months with that name, so you will find a lot of Lara Aharonian. It was a way for them to counter this kind of hate messages. So following the September 3, nationalism discourse has increased, extremist, discriminatory discourse, more attacks on women human rights defenders, and a lot of time these attacks are also affecting individual women human rights defenders in their own homes, because families are getting also concerned. They are asking their daughters not to be so active. They are asking their wives not to go to all those conferences, to show their faces. So now the challenges are even bigger that we are facing with the rise of nationalism and recently with the escalation of violence on the borders. We had a 4-day war in April on the border of Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia, and it increased the militarism as well. So now the soldier is even more sacred and nothing else matters. Women should take back their roles of caring and taking care of soldiers and also having more children, more soldiers. So this discourse is being also hijacked again. For example, to give you an idea, we have the issue of sex-selective abortion in Armenia. And we are the second after China with high ratio of sex-selective abortions. And in one of the regions, we are the first. And there was a lot of campaigns against that to stop sex-selective abortion. And now it's a backlash because now after the war, they are saying that, you see, there's a reason why more boys should be born, because we are a conflict area and we need more soldiers. So they're trying to legitimize why there's a sex-selective abortion against female fetuses. And during that time, there was also this positive thing that happened, which was very timely. It was when Norway suggested this resolution, first one, on protection of women human rights defenders, which was very important, especially those of us who were facing threats very specific to the work and who we are. And it was very much welcomed, and a lot of women organizations lobbied for it, as well as Human Rights Network, Human Rights House. Of course, it experienced a lot of resistance from certain countries that we know who they are, to weaken the resolution, to taking out the gender equality term because gender is a bad word, and you can guess who was behind that recommendation. Also to limit the resolution on sexual rights, orientation, and gender identity. So it was a little bit watered down, but regardless, it was an important, regardless of the strong opposition, it was an important resolution that passed. Unfortunately, even though Armenia was one of the signatory, they never talked about it in the country. They didn't have any translation, which is their responsibility, even when we raised this issue. So it's very important to raise it more locally, because it's a tool that can be used when we are talking with state actors, and not only, to ask for more protection, for more promotion of the work we are doing as women human rights defenders, and we are trying to promote more this, and even to educate our state actors that there is a UN resolution signed by your own government, which you should know about, and it's important. Instead of sponsoring and supporting hate against your own women human rights defenders. So it was very important because it gave one of the important aspects, that it gave a definition of what a woman human rights defender is, which is very clear. It's women who are defending rights, different rights, labor rights, land rights, women's rights, LGBT rights, and also others who are defending women's rights. So it includes different people. It's also important because it acknowledged the specific threats that we talked about. And I gave mostly importance to the online threat as well, because it was something new for the UN to address. And it was something that we were facing a lot in our region. Most of the threats were online, on social media. And of course, it gives specific responsibilities. That's another important part of this resolution, that it makes states responsible to promote the work that women human rights defenders are doing, to have a gender-sensitive approach to protection of women human rights defenders. And not only state, but also non-state actors, which was important. This is apart from the promotion and protection. Specific policies needed to be passed. And this is a tool that we can use to lobby and advocate for more mechanism. Especially, for example, in our case, that Armenia was one of the signatories, so they cannot say, we cannot do anything because they already sponsored this UN resolution. It's too late. They had to think about it before. It also helps to break isolation, because I talked about how isolated the work of human rights are, and sometimes specifically for women human rights, from the networks, from international platforms. A lot of time as women human rights defenders, we don't have access to a lot of mechanisms and platforms where we can ask for protection or raise our issues. Or maybe if we do so, we are faced with repercussion and threats from state actors. And then the second resolution was more recent in 2015, which is more, again, better protection and promotion of the work of human rights defenders. I was lucky to be part of the initial debates before it was passed. I went there with Florian from the advocacy department of the Human Rights House network, and together we were able to lobby in between hearings different diplomats why it was important. And when diplomats were sitting with me, for example, and they were asked, they were very much, because most of them they would talk about things that they never faced in reality. They are in another reality, which is very detached from the reality that we are in with our everyday work. So it was for them very interesting to hear my story as a woman human rights defenders. And it gave them more perspective on why this is important they support, because now they knew me as a woman human rights defenders. And I really liked this experience because it gave also opportunity for women human rights defenders to take part on changing some of the provisions. For example, when I read the initial draft, I gave the recommendation to include the online media threads, which was kept, which is good because a lot of time people who are not working in this area, they don't know how it can affect the work you are doing when you're getting constant threats on Twitter or Facebook. And those who are active in human rights, they know about this issue. So it was passed. Of course, there's a lot of resistance, and I witnessed personally how Russia was doing a lot of efforts to prevent, to water down, to bring again the national traditional values, the family, etc. As you know, it's one of the main obstacles that Russia is on the Human Rights Council, and since then 3 resolutions have been adopted on protection of family and traditional values, which is a big hindrance to the work we are doing as human rights defenders, because now if we ask for protection or we are raising some sensitive issues, they will bring up, the values of tradition and family, which is something that hindering the work that we are doing. So my experience was very good in this area, and then I left New York before it was voted on, and then I heard that it was voted on even though some parts were taken off because of the pressure from China and Russia and the African group. But it helped me also to connect with those diplomats who have the power to pass such resolutions, but to give them an idea of what is needed for me as a woman human rights defender that is working on the field and is facing threats for the work that I am doing. So it's something that should be continued and encouraged, and we should ask our place as well, so they can hear us, they can hear what we have to say, because these resolutions are for us, for our protection. I want to end my presentation with Berta. I'm sure maybe you've heard about her. She was killed recently because of the work she was doing. She's an activist, women human rights defender, working on indigenous rights in Honduras and land rights. And she was facing the big companies and the government who were trying to exploit one of the rivers. with her colleagues. And one day they just entered her home and they killed her. And I want to bring up a quote that's very famous of her, and which is very relevant to the things that we are talking today. And she says, "I have been persecuted not just for political leadership, but also for being a woman, for being Lenka. In this country, it's not the same being a male leader and being a female leader. And that comes with a very heavy weight." So this is in memory of her. She was very courageous. She faced a lot of threats, and unfortunately, the world was not able to protect her. But her work is continuing, and sometimes it's the sad reality, but some of us pay with our lives for the work we are doing, and that is why the mobilization of society and international agencies is very important to promote the work we are doing, and also to ensure better mechanism for protection. Thank you.
Дякуємо, пані Лара, за те, що ви описали ситуацію, яка існує в Вірменії, що означає бути правозахисницею в Вірменії, за те, що особливо за те, що ви звернули також увагу на резолюцію Організації Об'єднаних Націй стосовно захисту жінок-правозахисниць. І я пропоную приєднатися до цієї дискусії тепер вже наших українських колежанок. Будь ласка, якщо можна, займіть цим столом ще місце. Таня, Даша, Саша. Я думаю, варто почути про те... Я думаю, варто почути, наскільки відрізняється ситуація, якою вона є, наприклад, в Україні, а можливо також в Норвегії. Чи легко працювати жінкою-правозахисницею, чи жінкою, яка захищає права людини, яка працює в цій сфері. Як це в нас в Україні? Чи відчуваєте ви погрози, наприклад, онлайн? Чи існують якісь проблеми з тими традиційними цінностями, про які говорила Лара? Але я пропоную зробити таким чином. У нас не так багато часу на дискусію. Ми казали, що кожна фотографія має свою історію, і про неї можна буде, напевно, почути ще, коли ми будемо дивитись фотографії. Але просто таке запитання до всіх, і до Лари, і до Анне, і до Тетяни, і до Дар'ї, і до Саші. Ці фотографії були зроблені 2 роки тому. Ви щось відчували, щось було вкладено в ці фотографії, фотограф щось побачив, жінка побачила щось в цих фотографіях. Якби ці фотографії були зроблені сьогодні, то чи відрізнялись би вони і що саме було б на цих фотографіях? Ну і на ті питання, які я поставив, можливо, ви теж, на які хочете, зможете відповісти. І прохання теж до залу, якщо є бажання щось публічно сказати, то підніміть руку тут, бо там ви можете поспілкуватися в маленьких групках, а тут можна щось важливе, можливо, на публіку сказати. Хто перший?
Добре, я тоді розпочну. Доброго вечора всім. Велике спасибі, що ви прийшли на цю дискусію. Мені здається, вона дуже цікава і з тої презентації, яку ми послухали. Я для себе особисто дуже багато дізналася і дуже багато красномовних паралелей з тим, що відбувається в Україні. І я думаю, так само цікаво буде подивитися наші портрети на цій виставці. Мій портрет був знятий після Євромайдану. Ми тоді працювали волонтерами ініціативи Євромайдан СОС, ми допомагали постраждалим. І, власне, моя фотографія тоді була зроблена 2 роки тому на Майдані біля стовпа, який був пробитий кулями. Я займалася в той час документуванням інформації про людей, які загинули під час Євромайдану. І ми двічі цю інформацію обробляли, робили з неї подання до Міжнародного кримінального суду в Гаазі. І так само багато зусиль робили кампанії для ратифікації Римського статуту і для подолання безкарності злочинів під час Євромайдану. І, звичайно, зараз, коли я дивлюся на ту фотографію, вона з одного боку дуже близька, тому що 2 роки пройшло, а ми не набагато наблизилися до того великого суспільного запиту, який був після Євромайдану, на те, щоб відбулося справедливе розслідування, а ті, хто вчинив ці злочини, хто організував, понесли справедливе покарання. І навпаки, ми зараз бачимо те, що навіть якось намагається ця вся історія, щоб вона не була доведена до кінця, там люди цинічно влаштовують якісь телемости, ледве не нові політичні проекти, втікши з України, вони, можливо, навіть планують якесь своє повернення сюди, і це виглядає дуже цинічно. Але після того стався військовий конфлікт, воєнний конфлікт на території України, збройний конфлікт, і окупований Крим, окупована частина Донбасу. І, звичайно, це дуже сильно поляризувало українців. І я думала про те, можливо, яка була б зараз фотографія, який б був мій внутрішній стан і моє відчуття. І порівняно з тим, що було 2 роки тому, мабуть, не багато чого змінилося. І ця фотографія так само була б чорно-білою зараз, як вона знята тоді. Але вона була б чорно-білою, мабуть, розділеною на 2 частини фоном. Один чорний, одна частина чорна, одна біла, як те, що дуже поляризувало людей, і те, що збільшило, можливо, всередині якесь навіть випадки, коли люди стають терпимими до того, що до тортур або до якихось інших речей, до яких вони раніше, можливо, не допускали. А я би на цьому фоні була сірою, бо я, мабуть, дуже відчуваю зараз цю лінію, яка розділяє людей. І ми, якраз повертаючись до теми роботи жінок-правозахисниць і загроз, погроз, яких вони отримують через соціальні мережі, зокрема, це також дуже сильно кореспондувало з моїми відчуттями і думками, адже протягом останніх 2 місяців я, можливо, отримала більше погроз і поганих коментарів, які, зокрема, намагалися образити мене як жінку в інтернеті. Коли я, наприклад, критикувала оприлюднення сайту «Миротворець» персональних даних журналістів, я стільки негативних коментарів, це були просто сотні коментарів. Після цього я написала великий матеріал, який стосувався незаконних місць несвободи Служби безпеки України, де були дані про те, що відбувалися катування людей, яких були нібито сепаратистами. І я є монітором національного превентивного механізму, ми відвідуємо різні місця несвободи, тюрми, СІЗО, психіатричні лікарні, і ми робили візити дуже часто минулого року до тих місць, які знаходяться в зоні АТО, в сірій зоні, близько до місць конфлікту. І я думаю, що дуже важливо туди їздити, тому що це тобі дає набагато глибше розуміння всієї проблеми, ніж, як я кажу, диванна сотня, яка сидить і коментує. І от, власне, по цих 2 ситуаціях, отримавши дуже багато негативу і погроз, я побачила, наскільки сильно розділеним стало суспільство зараз. І, очевидно, робота правозахисників, правозахисниць в Україні найближчими роками полягатиме в тому, щоб запроваджувати тут принципи перехідного правосуддя, справедливості, відшкодування, реституції, документування того всього, що відбулося. І нам дуже важливо змістити цей дискурс не в позицію того, хто, власне, яким чином, хто став переможцем чи хто став переможеним, а нам, можливо, потрібно сьогодні подумати про жертв цього конфлікту. І мені здається, що дуже важливо, якщо в центрі цього дискурсу будуть ті, хто постраждали, і їхні родини. І мені здається, що роль жінок-правозахисниць дуже важлива в тому, щоб цю тему піднімати. Вибачте за таку довгу відповідь.
Мене звати Дар'я Свиридова, я представляю Українську російську спілку з прав людини. Спробую теж коротко. Я не можу сказати, мабуть, в кожного в цій аудиторії дуже так відгукнулася та історія, яку розказувала Лора, це безумовно події восени 13-го року, які відбувалися в Арменії. Вони дуже близькі нам, бо фактично наша країна пережила дуже схожі події, може просто реакція в нас була інша, трошки інакша, і наслідки в нас інакші. Це складне питання, як нам бути з цим, як нам з цим працювати. Я тут на 100% погоджуюсь з Тетяною, що, мабуть, для мене головний виклик перед самоправозахисниками, перед правозахисницями на сьогодні – це питання не помсти, а відповідальності, це питання жертв, питання відповідальності винних за порушення прав людини, бо, мабуть, для мене один з найбільших викликів і сумнівів щодо взагалі міжнародної системи механізмів захисту прав людини, яка, на жаль, не завжди показує свою спроможність, наприклад, тих ситуацій, які ми можемо бачити як в нашій країні, так і в країнах-сусідах, які, на жаль, не завжди можуть відстояти самотужки права людини, про які досить багато говорить міжнародне співтовариство. Це виклики щодо притягнення до відповідальності як певної превенції проти майбутніх порушень прав людини, з якими нам ще буде важливо працювати. І, на мій погляд, можливо, роль жінок-правозахисниць, безумовно, в цьому процесі буде досить важливою. Що стосується питання Сергія, коли він задав це питання, якщо чесно, я собі уявила дуже яскраво свою фотографію. Моє фото, яке ви зможете побачити на виставці, я дуже вдячна вам, що ви прийшли і зможете її подивитись. І подивитись історії багатьох інших жінок, чудових, розумних, сміливих на цих фотографіях. І це не всі жінки-правозахисники. Я думаю, в цій аудиторії кожна з вас, мабуть, заслуговує на свою окрему виставку. Моя фото була зроблена також 2 роки тому. Вона була зроблена в Чернігові. На той час ми створювали освітній будинок прав людини в місті Чернігів, куди вас всіх запрошуємо. Цей будинок і мета його створення фактично освітня діяльність, і він об'єднав дуже багато потужних правозахисних організацій під своїм дахом. Це організації з усієї країни, які займалися саме просвітницькою діяльністю у сфері прав людини. Створивши цей дім, в принципі, ми мріємо і зараз вже впроваджуємо дуже багато самоосвітніх програм. І, на мій погляд, мабуть, самоосвіта в сфері прав людини є такою, знаєте, собі вакциною від тих страхів, від того незнання і страхів, які викликані цими незнаннями, які керують людьми сьогодні, в тому числі в нашій країні, що призводить і до розподілу суспільства, і до певних непорозумінь в суспільстві, і до конфліктів, в тому числі воєнних конфліктів, які ми сьогодні маємо. Так от тоді це був початок окупації Криму, і я представляла кримську організацію в будинку прав людини освітньому в Чернігові. Ми одні з засновників цієї організації. І коли ми виїжджали робити цю фотографію, це був один з виїздів вже після активної фази окупації. Мабуть, один з перших, бо коли йшла активна фаза окупації, я не могла собі дозволити залишити Крим. Вона для мене була, якщо чесно, я взагалі дуже слабо собі там щось пам'ятаю, окрім того, що відбувалося в Криму. Але я розуміла одне, що для мене було дуже важливо саме питання освіти. Мені здавалося, що все те, що коїлось на той час в моєму домі, в моєму великому домі Україна, в моєму більш маленькому домі Крим, мені здавалося, що все це просто непорозуміння, і люди просто не розуміють, що роблять, і саме освіта може виправити цю ситуацію. Але будинок для багатьох правозахисних організацій та правозахисниць і правозахисників тоді ще виконав і свою іншу функцію, бо ще однією його важливою задачею є підтримка правозахисників у вигнанні і організацію у вигнанні. От наша організація Альменда Кримська вимушена була полишити територію Криму після окупації, і фактично один з прихистків ми отримали в тому числі на базі будинку прав людини. І ця фотографія дуже багато для мене особисто значить, бо вона асоціюється дуже з багатьма непростими речами, які нашій організації прийшлось пережити. Але знаєте, сьогодні мені б хотілося, щоб через 2 роки, навіть сьогодні чи завтра, ця фото була зроблена в Криму. Ну і ми зробимо колись таку виставку в Криму обов'язково. Тому що Мабуть, основний фокус, безумовно, моєї роботи сьогодні спрямований на Крим, і будь-яка діяльність і жінок-правозахисників, і чоловіків-правозахисників там – це та діяльність, про яку, в принципі, сьогодні не говорять вголос, бо просто говорити про це – це вже небезпека для кожної людини, хто перебуває там. І знаєте, оці традиційні цінності, про які нам сьогодні вже розповідали, вони увірвались в моє життя саме з окупацією Криму і з приходом традиційного російського світу, руського міру в мою країну. Мені здавалося, що це щось, що вже пройшла Україна, і ми будемо повертатись до цих питань, які, на мій погляд, були просто смішні, але, на жаль, ні, ми до них повертаємось. І така певна маргіналізація правозахисного руху, в тому числі на територіях, які сьогодні знаходяться в стані конфлікту, маргіналізація правозахисників, в першу чергу жінок, безумовно, бо, як ви почули сьогодні, безумовно, ці гендерні стереотипи, певні стереотипи щодо того, якою має бути традиційна роль жінки, вони дозволяють демонізувати вигляд, образ жінки, особливо тієї, яка фактично працює проти системи державної. І це дуже вдало сьогодні використовується, в тому числі в Криму, проти правозахисного руху. І мені хочеться сподіватися, що ми подолаємо і це питання, і, мабуть, моя фотографія була би сьогодні в Криму. Для мене це особисто дуже важливо. Дуже важливо, щоб показати важливість захисту прав людини там, в Криму, і щоб всі пам'ятали, що там дуже багато людей, які продовжують свою діяльність щодня, наражаючись на смертельну небезпеку. І мені все ж таки хотілося вірити, що ви завершували свій виступ тим, що, на жаль, це правда, але ми маємо розуміти, що, на жаль, багато людей, правозахисників, правозахисниць іноді вмирають і мають, скажімо так, вимушені жертвувати навіть життям заради тих цінностей, заради яких ми працюємо. Але я хочу вірити, що, знову ж таки, можливо, навіть освіта і зміни, яких ми всі прагнемо і на які ми всі працюємо, вони допоможуть нам запобігати таким страшним жертвам. І що я раніше думала до приходу російського традиційних цінностей в мій світ, знаєте, я думала, що сила жінки в її слабкості. Знаєте, є така фраза. Так от, коли такий маленький екскурс у спогади тієї фотографії, яка могла бути, коли захоплювали, наприклад, військові частини в Криму, я думаю, що на Сході, може, якісь дуже схожі були ситуації, просто я особисто їх не побачила. Для тих, хто це робив, не було різниці між чоловіками та жінками. Били всіх однаково, тортури застосовували до всіх однаково. І мені дуже хочеться, щоб, можливо, і під час сьогоднішньої дискусії нашої ми розуміли, безумовно, жінки дуже часто в вразливому становищі, але що стосується правозахисників, дуже часто, в принципі, саме це слово і саме ця діяльність правозахисна, і може варто ще поговорити, що ми розуміємо під цією діяльністю, вона вже пункт номер 1, чому ми всі в зоні ризику в цій чи іншій ситуації. Дякую і надам передаю слово.
Доброго вечора, мене звати Олександра Матвійчук, я керівник правозахисної організації Центру громадянських свобод. З 30 листопада 2013 року я координую громадську ініціативу Євромайдан СОС. Вона була створена якраз вранці 30 листопада у відповідь на брутальний розгін студентської демонстрації, яка відбулася буквально 4 години до її створення. І ми протягом всього Євромайдану працювали 24 години на добу, надавали правову допомогу та іншу допомогу людям, які страждали від переслідування в Києві, в регіонах. Вже після закінчення Євромайдану ми порахували, що ми прийняли близько 16 тисяч дзвінків, і через наші руки пройшли сотні і сотні арештованих людей, людей, які були піддані тортурам, людей, проти яких були порушені сфабриковані кримінальні і адміністративні справи. Ми контактували і допомагали родичам зниклих. Ну і, звичайно, найтяжчий момент – це коли нам довелося віддзвонюватися з наших гарячих ліній рідним загиблих і говорити, що ваш чоловік або ваш брат, або ваш батько, він загинув. Там, в такому-то місці знаходиться його тіло, там знаходиться наш волонтер, приїжджайте, заберіть. Ну і, звичайно, ніхто з нас не був до такого готовий. Власне, фотографія зроблена за кілька місяців після закінчення Євромайдану, і я згадала про цей такий досить драматичний особистий досвід для того, щоб пояснити, чому я на фотографії, виставка називається «Правозахисниці обличчя сили». От я коли подивилася назву, я так собі посміхнулася, тому що, ну, власне, ми прийшли з фотографом на Майдан, а мені там фізично боляче було знаходитися, і моє обличчя ніякої сили абсолютно не випромінює. У виправдання можу сказати, що лютий закінчився 22 числом і почався новий рубіж, почався окупація Криму, і ми були першою ініціативою, яка відправила туди мобільні групи. Власне, з того часу, з 2 березня, ми працюємо методом документування, які роблять члени мобільних груп в Криму, на Сході, в зоні АТО, маємо справу з воєнними злочинами, з порушеннями прав людини. От, і, власне, у нас не було, і в мене не було можливості ні відрефлексувати, ні якось так більш спокійно ставитися до цього досвіду. Ну і фотографія ззаду мене груда шин. От, ну, власне, вона відображає весь цей спектр емоцій, які я тоді, у 2014 році, весною, коли вона була зроблена, відчувала. От, зараз би я точно зробила іншу фотографію, вона би була більш оптимістична. Не тому, що я невиправний оптимізм, я дивлюся в майбутнє і бачу оптимістично, хоча я реаліст і бачу його нелегким. Я розумію, що перед нами, як перед людьми, які живуть в країні у збройному конфлікті, є кілька викликів, які нам треба долати. Нам треба, по-перше, змусити нашу владу провести кардинальні реформи в сфері прав людини, щоб ми ніколи не могли раптово відкотитися назад, коли змінюється цей політичний флюгер. Друге, нам потрібно виграти війну з Російською Федерацією і самим не перетворитися на Росію, пам'ятати, за що ми боремося, за які цінності ми виходили на Євромайдан, не здавати їх зараз добровільно, як би привабливо це в риториці боротьби з війною не звучало, не здавати острівці свободи слова, мирних зібрань владі, яка має таку природу, що завжди хоче обмежувати права людини. І третє, перед нами дуже складний особистісний виклик, я його пережила на собі, дуже складно займатися тим, чим ми займаємося, і любити свою країну, тобто бути патріотом своєї країни. Тобто це виклик війни. І коли тобі просто емоційно боляче, після того, як ти поговорив, наприклад, з жінками, які вийшли з полону, і вони розказали тобі, що з ними відбувалося протягом цих ув'язнень, і в тебе наростає якась агресія. Але фотографія була б точно оптимістична, тому що я вже на другий рік розумію, що якщо ми хочемо побудувати демократичну країну, так насправді, не декларативно, як в статті 1 Конституції записано, ми не можемо ділити суспільство на своїх, чужих, ворогів, друзів. Ми маємо бути на такому розділенні ніякого довготривалого суспільства, і ніколи ти не побудуєш. І тут, звичайно, дуже складно нам говорити про майбутнє національне примирення, про перехідні правосуддя, елементи, які ми вже починаємо запроваджувати, але це необхідно робити, не концентруючись на своїх власних емоціях або болі, або нашому травматичному досвіду, який ми пережили.
Дякую. Дякую, Таня, Даша, Саша. Ане, Лара, хоча б по два слова, Ане, в Норвегії як справа? Як жінкам правозахисникам? І Лара, якби сьогодні робилася фотографія, то як би вона виглядала?
Yeah, so I think if you should make a portrait, we didn't have a portrait of a women human rights defender from Norway. But I think if I should choose one, I would have chosen Kadra, one Somalian women human rights defender in Norway, because they are really facing and struggling for the rights of women in Norway to have the equal rights against the stereotypes, against the more extremist Islamic like pressure that they face, and they face the pressure from the Norwegian society and from the Muslim society. So I think they are the real heroes in Norway. And then I thought just to say that I don't think it is by chance that it was the women human rights defenders really being the faces of the Euromaidan, the SOS Euromaidan. It was really the women who managed to reach out and to also urgently respond to the situation in Ukraine. And I think it's extraordinary and it's very special, and that's why your civil society is also very strong. When it comes to the other pictures that you will see downstairs, it's interesting to see the picture from Poland, because the two Polish women, they are standing and they protect women in, or human rights in Azerbaijan. Today, I think they would have chosen another motive, because today they themselves are facing restriction in freedom of expression and assembly. So the situation is going the other direction also in Poland. And then you have the picture of Malahat Nasibova. She's the woman from Azerbaijan. Like the other, she's really, you have this dignity in that picture. You will see she's glancing and she's sitting. Today she cannot go back to Azerbaijan. So when we had this exhibition first time in London, and Tatiana and Alexandra, they were also there. And it's, you will really, Dasha, were you there? I think so, yes? No. So she went back, and then in the autumn, the crackdown came in Azerbaijan. So she's really like what Lara talked about. She really faced this, that she was so strong, they could not take her. So first they took and pressured her children. And she managed to get the children out to continue her work in a very difficult region with Nakhchivan, which is near Armenia and Turkey and Iran. So it's an enclave. And then, since they could not stop her work, they, in the end, attacked the husband. And they were beating him up so terribly, so he could not see anything. And in the end, we have to smuggle them out through Turkey. And now today they live in Norway, so she cannot go back. But she will still be a woman with dignity. So I think it's these 2 years, so many stories have really changed. It has for some become worse. So I'm very glad Alexandra said she will have a more positive picture, because I think some of the others will maybe be even more strong today and really illustrate the threats they are facing. Yes.
Well, for myself, when I looked at my picture, it's been a long time, I felt that it was very lonely in that picture. So maybe the next time I will take a group picture with a lot of women, because as a women defenders, one of the forces that we develop is we know how to work together. And a lot of time we work with collectives, with our feminist sisters, and it counters a little bit all the threats and negativity that we face. And I think for next time I will aim more for a group picture, less lonely.
Yes, and just to comment in the end, so also with Malahat's pictures, the ones who rescued her, they were women human rights defenders from Turkey. They were the ones standing at the border with actually the what do you call that? Emergency, yes. Managing to take her husband to the hospital in Turkey and rescue him. So it was really the women together. So I agree with Lara. Group pictures next time.
Дякую, Аня, дякую, Лара. Перед тим, як ми підемо дивитися фотографії і пити каву, я анонсував, що, можливо, у когось є якісь важливі такі меседжі або щось нашим представницям правозахисного руху, або просто щось
Перше, дуже дякую, дуже цікаві насправді виступи усіх. І в мене є запитання до пані Лари. От як, власне, ситуація з домашнім насиллям у Вірменії? Можливо, ви наведете якусь статистику, чи є у вас гарячі лінії для людей, які постраждали від домашнього насильства? І також от, цікаво, як ситуація у бізнесі і в політиці, тобто наскільки бізнес позиції топ-менеджменту і топ-позиції в політиці відкриті для жінок у Вірменії. Дякую.
With domestic violence issue, we are for the past years lobbying for adoption of the law on domestic violence, because until today we don't have a law on domestic violence. We are the only one in the region not having legislation. The numbers are high compared to the population. With the coalition to stop violence against women, which is a network of 7 organizations working together to advocate and to stop violence, gender-based violence, we try to gather data. We have 3 hotlines working in Armenia, and yearly we get more than 3,000 calls. Still, government is very in denial of the issue of domestic violence, even though we are also making visible the faces of women who died this past years because of intimate partner violence. We gathered 30 cases, and this year we have, in 2016, already 30 cases of women who died because of intimate partner violence. And based on research done by UNFPA, it's almost 61% of women who are facing some kind of violence from intimate partners in Armenia. But still, it's very much denied. Society is now talking a little bit more about it because of all the awareness that we are raising. Last year, what we did to counter this invisibility, we took the shoes of women who died because of violence and we put it in the Republic Square with their stories. So people who pass, they see the shoes of women who were there, but they're not there anymore because of violence against them and because their husband or their partners have killed them. We are following the cases in court as well. Which is the situation is very bad because we're not, most of the cases are being closed or it's a complete environment of impunity. For example, we had a case where the husband had stabbed his wife 30 times in front of her children in their house and he got only 3.5 years in prison, which is very insulting as well. And most of the cases are not, usually they say there's not evidence or because the killing was done under the emotional effect, passionate crime, and they try to, give lower year in prison. So the numbers are higher and higher, and we only have 2 shelters right now for the whole Armenia, which can accommodate together 15 women with their children, and they're only run by organizations. There's no state support for this, and a lot of time we get calls of women where we don't know where to place them because there's no place in the shelter, and we need to either ask them to return or find another place or maybe rent an apartment, but it's not always safe. So the discussions are continuing with the state to pass the law, but they're very resistant on this issue. Regarding the political involvement and economically, women are among the poorest in the country, and politically the involvement is very low. Overall political participation of women, it's not more than 9% of decision making, if you count all government and parliament together. So it's very low in the region, if you compare it with Georgia and Azerbaijan. women are not getting involved in politics. They are prevented as well due to the attitudes, due to also lack of economic power. So it's all interrelated. So this is the numbers approximately. I don't know if you wanted to know more about it.
Добрий вечір. Середа Софія, адвокат. Я б хотіла подякувати за вашу участь, за те, що ви підняли таку тему в Україні, оскільки досить мало приділяється уваги захисту прав жінок, і особливо прав захисників. Я б хотіла сказати про те, що в своїй роботі досить часто доводиться стикатися з різними погрозами, які поступають на адресу, і досить часто ці погрози є саме через те, що ти жінка. Тому я хочу подякувати вам за те, що ви піднімаєте цю тему, і сказати, що це досить важливо є для України, оскільки досить часто ці питання замовчуються і не піднімається так масово дискусія, скажімо так, в суспільстві. Тому це є важливо, мабуть, для жінок, особливо для жінок-правозахисників, що ви робите таку роботу. Тому ми вам вдячні, що ви провели таку дискусію, привернули увагу фотовиставкою. Я думаю і сподіваюся, що надалі в Україні ця тема буде підніматися і жінки будуть відчувати себе більш захищеними і будуть відстоювати свої права для того, щоб Україна дійсно себе відчувала соціально правовою демократичною державою. Дякую вам.
I just want to add that I forgot to say that with the second resolution in 2015, what was interesting that the protection was not only specifically with women, with human rights defenders, but also people who were supporting and protecting, like lawyers, were defending human rights defenders and family members, and which, because sometimes when we talk about threats and everything, we also should include all the people who are also in the work together or collaborating.
Хочу додати буквально два слова саме щодо роботи по захисту правозахисників і правозахисниць. Ну, по-перше, цікаво, я думаю, що в цій аудиторії є ще юристи. Якщо є юристи, є. От знаєте, в мене виникла така чомусь асоціація. Якщо юристи всі знають такий мем, якщо можна назвати, ти ж юрист. От знаєте, от щось таке в мене викликає слово «ти ж жінка». От, мабуть, це щось про те ж саме. Юристи мене зрозуміють. Це такий стереотипний підхід, да? Ти ж юрист, ти маєш. Ти маєш, ти мусиш, суспільство від тебе щось очікує. От щось таке саме є про жінку. Ти жінка, ти маєш, ти мусиш, просто тому що ти жінка. Я тут з вами погоджуюсь, що дуже важлива увага і саме до, можливо, жінок правозахисниць, бо їм важче себе захистити. І програма, з якою ми безпосередньо, наприклад, працюємо, це програма освіти для адвокатів та юристів з декількох країн світу, яка імплементується за підтримки саме мережі будинків прав людини, яка в тому числі робила цю виставку, яку ви побачите вже зовсім скоро. І остання така найбільш нагальна проблема, з якою сьогодні саме працює ця спільнота юристів та адвокатів міжнародна, яка навчається правам людини та міжнародним стандартам, то фактично сьогодні перестає бути просто адвокатами та юристами, а стає правозахисниками і наражає себе щодня на небезпеку, просто виконуючи свої професійні обов'язки. Саме з цією темою сьогодні дуже багато працює мережа домів прав людини. І є один підготовлений звіт правозахисниками, адвокатами і юристами з 5 країн, який от нещодавно був презентований саме в Києві, щодо особливої потреби юристів та адвокатів, які займаються правозахистом. І серед них дуже багато жінок, які особливо також про це відмічали ми в респондентів, яких опитували, до речі, коли жінки, адвокати та юристи казали про те, що на відміну, наприклад, від чоловіків, адвокатів та юристів, ті погрози, які надходять на їх адресу, дуже часто пов'язані саме з їх ідентичністю як жінкою, намаганням принизити їх саме як жінку, а не як професіонала, наприклад. І це дуже така важлива і чутлива тема, яку я погоджуюсь, дуже важливо піднімати, в тому числі серед професійних спільнот, які захисники від порушень прав людини, а в той же час стають самі жертвами цих порушень. Дякую.
Дякую. Мене звати Рінат Ковбасюк. Я представляю міжнародну громадську організацію «Інтернаціональний союз», яка захищає права національних меншин в Україні, зокрема. І пані Лара, я хотів би вас запитати саме, як на Закавказі, зокрема в Арменії, скажімо, жінки, які представляють національні меншини, чи зазнають вони дискримінації, і чи, власне кажучи, чи зазнають вони дискримінації, і чи є до них якесь упередження, припустимо, чи вони рівні в правах з іншими, скажімо так, з титульною нацією, з вірменами. Яка ситуація сьогодні, в тому числі в Арменії і в інших Кавказьких республіках? Тому, я думаю, насправді ця тема теж важлива і актуальна в сьогоднішньому, скажімо, суспільстві. Дякую.
Thank you. The difference in Armenia compared to Georgia and Azerbaijan, that there's not a lot of national minorities, ethnic minorities. We have one of the biggest, which is still very small group. It's the Yazidi community, which lives in more rural areas of Armenia. They have their separate communities, and but they are on different areas, legislation and all things. They are Armenian citizens and have access to all the legislation, but of course there's things that are very specific. When we used to work with one Yazidi community on reproductive health, and there are some specificity that we were trying to address, because among our members we have also Yazidi women and Kurdish women, and it was their initiatives to go work with the Yazidi community in one of the villages, because there was, based on tradition and cultural values, the early marriages was very common, and multiple births without that much access to reproductive health services. Most of the lack of access is for all rural areas mainly, but specifically for the Yazidi community it was even more. And there was some cooperation, but not much. I would like to see more of that. In Armenia it's a little bit less of an issue than it is in Georgia and in Azerbaijan, but the issues are being raised, and there's a lot of issues to be still addressed because of the situation and the different conflict as well in the region. There's a lot of refugees, IDPs in the different parts of the territories in South Caucasus. And a lot of time these issues are not addressed intersectionally, among human rights defenders and women's rights defenders as well. Not as much that should be raised. Still there's a lot of work to be done. Some are doing it, but very specifically and very in isolated manner, with small initiatives among themselves, like the one we did with the Yazidi community. But after recent war in Syria and also the more outflow of refugees coming from Syria and also from the Yazidi community as well, these issues are being raised now very recently. Because now we have a bigger community of Syrians living in Armenia that are refugees, and also a small community that newly came from the Yazidi population. And now just recently they're trying to raise this issue of integration, and Armenian population is not that diverse compared to the others, so it's a new issue as well, a new reality that they are faced with. So in the following years they might be different challenges coming up with this change in population, but for now there's not a lot of initiatives regarding national minorities, very few and very separate. If that answers.
Дякуємо. На жаль, нас час піджимає, і ми маємо піти вже подивитись виставку повну. І ми маємо таку можливість поговорити ще між собою, але дайте мені ще 30 секунд, я просто не можу не сказати. Я дуже радий, що познайомився з Ларою. У нас завтра ще буде розмова про співпрацю домів, будинків Віліванської і освітньої вимоги, які знаходяться в Чернігові. Я давно знаю Анне, Таню, Дашу, Сашу. Чомусь зараз я згадав їх там 2, 3, 4 роки тому. Ось. І у мене є що особисто кожній з вас сказати про це. Але я зроблю це там, так як зроблять і так, як і всі інші зможуть з вами поговорити. Але насправді я пишаюсь тим, що я вас знаю, з вами знайомий. І Саша зараз, перед тим, як всі підуть, у неї тут є якась.
Насправді, я не даремно сказала, що дивлюся в майбутнє оптимістично, тому що, мені видається, Євромайдан розбурхав у людей все найкраще, що в них може бути. І загалом драматичні часи – це шанс для людини проявити свої найкращі якості. Тобто, звичайний час, спокійній Швейцарії, вона б собі спокійно ходила на роботу, і нічим би більше не переймалася і соціальною активністю не займалася. Це я до того, що ця енергія Євромайдану, насправді, вона вилилася в активність тисяч, а навіть сотень тисяч звичайних людей, які де-факто виконують державницькі функції, вони допомагають армії, вони влаштовують переселенців, вони документують воєнні злочини, вони лікують поранених. І у нас є, це не фотовиставка, але є щорічна волонтерська премія Євромайдан СОС, якою ми популяризуємо волонтерський рух. І ось я принесла календарі, тут обличчя людей, яких номінували, а номінувати може бути будь-хто, будь-якого волонтера або волонтерку, яку вважає за потрібне, переможців. Це календарі на 2016 рік. Це дуже світлі обличчя, це дуже достойні люди. Ну і всі, хто хоче взяти такий календарик або подарувати комусь, принести в свій офіс, будь ласка, ось вони лежать. Я взяла достатню кількість.
Дякуємо всім.
Thank you all for coming and attending, and we invite everybody to go downstairs and enjoy the reception and as well as the photo exhibit. Дякуємо вам всім, що завітали сьогодні до американського дому. Запрошуємо всіх вниз, насолодитися ресепшеном, а також подивитися фотовиставку «Жінки, обличчя своїх правозахисниць». Дякуємо всім, заходьте до американського дому частіше.